And welcome back. We have our first segment this morning, and we have joining us members of the Belize Peace Movement. We have with us none other than Rufus X in the building, and we have Paco Smith. Morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So I want to just start off by getting your impression. We were talking this morning about the official announcement that there is a yes to the ICJ campaign. Of course, you are clearly the opponent here as the no to the ICJ campaign. Tell me what your thoughts are on the formation of this new group. Rufus?
The formation of this new group, the yes?
Yes to the ICJ.
Yes, I understand there's a
Citizens for the Defense of
non-profit
Sovereignty.
organization just recently formed. And I am of the opinion that the political forces in this country know that it's going to be a clear and concise no. And that would cause them to have no other way to get out of calling a new election, resign and call a new election after that no vote. But they are trying to get around it by forming this non-profit organization to say, well, no, we, but the people in this country know exactly who is forwarding this yes campaign.
Also, you see it as a matter of it being formed as a way to not make it a mandate issue.
Exactly so. They want to be separate from the result of this vote. They want to get out of it. It's just a technicality, as far as I can see.
You share the same thoughts, Paco?
Well, basically my perspective on it is this, and I don't really want to dwell on it too much because it's a quote-unquote new group. I believe it's a manifestation of things that were in the making long to come, and it might be the realization of the fact, as Brother Rufus said, that they see how the wind is blowing in terms of public sentiment. And what little I know about it, because I just heard about it last night, I will say that, and present company excluded, I believe that...
We're not lawyers, though.
Yeah. When I see maneuvering by people with a legal mind, I think that it's calculated. It's definitely calculated for whatever reason. But from the Belize Peace Movement perspective, we don't want to dwell on that.
Yeah.
We want to focus on full disclosure, bringing out the word that we want to get out so that Belizeans are empowered to know the full gamut and the full scope of this issue that is facing us.
Now, your campaign has been the most active from very early. I mean, you guys got started before even the education campaign got launched. And I just want to ask, what has been your overall reaction as the reaction from people that you interact with as the date gets closer? Are you finding support? Are you finding undecided persons? What's it like?
Well, Marlene, from the very beginning of this campaign, I've been saying to my colleagues that I have trust in the Belize people, and I'm predicting a clear 89% no at the vote, because I have been saying to them that they call the people fool. And indeed, they have been playing the fool between red and blue for 6 decades. But the people of this country know that here is where they live, and this is the only place they can live, and there's nowhere they're going to gamble with their country. So I'm expecting a resounding no vote to this.
The polls, though, aren't that high. Even the most, there was a poll from a radio station, and it was around 70. There's another one that was done by an online media source that was around 60. And yesterday, to me, one of the most credible votes was the SCA vote, which had it
at 55.
The margin of error was 5 points.
My brother, I have
and it seems to be decreasing if you look at the polls.
I've spoken to the children at SCA, and there was probably about 650 students. And when we asked about the no, there was not a single hand that was left down. But they sent in all this high-power team there later on after we left.
And inform them, maybe?
And drill them, and drill them. This is something, Kevin, you have to watch, you know. These yes people are terrible. In fact, let me explain something. When money is at its most powerful, when it's used as a bribe. And we know who are supplying the money for this campaign.
Do you think, though, that this is an issue? And in fact, let me say to the positive. I kind of want to challenge you, Brother Ruffian, that this is not an issue that Belizeans can be bought on. This is one thing you could...
This is what I'm saying.
This is one thing you could spend. You could give me $1 million to vote, and when I go in there, I'm sorry for you.
But Kevin, what I'm saying also, the money, look, they brought in all these high-powered people. I tried to be present at all the forum, especially for the yes. And you know something? One thing that intrigued me, I remember when it reached a stage at the Wesley Church there, I took the mic and I asked Brother Leslie, who was a presenter there for the yes. I said, Mr. Leslie, our presentation was super. I said, but my brain translates everything that you have said so far as a no vote. I said, so you are campaigning for the no. I said, you have told us that we have our sovereignty. You have told us that we have our border demarcated. You have told us that we're an independent nation. We don't have a problem. So why are we going to the ICJ? Why are we going there? I mean, if we have all these things intact, it's Guatemala have a problem. Why they and the British don't work it out? He said, you know what, Rufus, you have a good point. So I don't know why we are going to the ICJ. The money that we are spending here can give a lot of deserving students scholarship to study and make them productive. And, you know, we have not been investing in our human resources in this country, and that's why we are so backward. Why are you using the money for campaigning?
At that same forum, a past foreign minister, Eamon Courtney, in his presentation, which is online, you can Google it, was saying that the reason why you would take it to the ICJ is if you want to resolve the issue. And therefore, by extension, those who do not want to resolve the issue, you don't go to the ICJ. So you vote no.
Well,
in this case, he was saying put it in an icebox. And
this is not a matter of gambling, Kevin. This is a sovereignty we are dealing with. This is a country, you know. This is a country where people live for a couple of 100 years. I mean, why should we gamble our country away? You know, there was a time when Guatemala refused to go to the ICJ. They didn't have any.
Because it was on different grounds at that time. It was fair and equitable along with the legal aspect. And that's what has changed with this particular
Well, Marlene, I still could never see the reason going to the ICJ. Negotiation is an endless process. And if the people are tired negotiating, it's time they step aside, get out of the way, and give somebody else another chance.
What is, in terms of the top 2 reasons from both of you as to why speaking to both the average Belizean, because I think that the average Belizean man, the taxi man on the street, has a little bit different view than your intellectual. You know, they look at it a little bit different. But what are your top 2 reasons to both those groups as to why they really should go in and vote no?
First and foremost, the risk is too high. Number 1, the risk is too high. And number 2, the parameters that are set up by virtue of the special agreement compromise are not amenable to Belize's situation. In other words, a better arrangement could have been put forward that could have put Belize in a better position to consider going to the ICJ. So fundamentally, it's those 2 reasons. The risk is too high, and number 2, the parameters set by virtue of the special agreement compromise are not in Belize's favor. We could have done better.
What is your issue with the special agreement?
Oh, there's so many issues with that. It's incredible.
I've heard quite a bit in terms of the wording.
Absolutely, absolutely. The wording is very suspect. It depends on the perspective that you take on it. Because one perspective is that by virtue of the wording, you're almost legitimizing Guatemala's claim by saying yes. That's one perspective. The second aspect is, well, by virtue of the fact that the special agreement compromise, excuse me, makes no allowance for appeal. That's it. Once the judgment is made, that is it, and it's a case of, well, we never mean to say yes or anything like that. That's it. It's said and done. I liken the scenario that is being put forward by the Yes campaign to that of the Titanic, and I'll tell you why I say that. Number 1, I believe theirs is a sinking ship, and number 2, it's because they are pushing forward this singular narrative that is saying that we have an ironclad case. And I will tell you something, excuse me, irrespective of what manner of law it is, whether it be civil law, criminal law, international law, what have you, there's always a certain degree of risk. And that's why, in terms of at least my personal perspective, we have to weigh those risks. And if I were to sum it up in a nutshell, I believe that the fundamental thing that Belizeans need to look at when they go into the polls on the 10th of April this year is to, number one, put on the proverbial scale the inherent risks that we know are there versus the purported benefits. And when you put it on that balance, I believe that through full disclosure, and I'm kind of backtracking a little bit to your first question, through full disclosure, I believe that once Belizeans hear both sides and they get to see it side by side what we're dealing with, I am seeing that Belizeans are more and more becoming attuned and swaying more towards the no vote.
Let me press a little bit further on the issue of the wording of the special agreement. Would you concede that oftentimes legal language may not necessarily be something that we, as non-legal persons, may understand the true meaning of? And I say that very carefully. When we read a new bill or anything that is being put forward, there's a difference between must and shall, which we may use interchangeably, but in law has very definitive meaning. We saw in the formulation of this special agreement a very extended process, which people who cannot tell us exactly the process have said it was argued down, and we've seen this in many other meetings. People argue every single word from the placement of a the. Can it just be that perhaps we are looking at it through non-legal eyes and there may be a specific purpose as to why it is worded the way it is?
I would not concede that, none whatsoever. None
Because?
whatsoever. Because the fundamental reason is this. Those who are negotiating, well, who have negotiated on our behalf, yes, they have legal minds. But the bottom line is this: when there is the element of risk for my country, right, irrespective of if it's in legalese or Creole or English or what have you, in terms of what I see, this is my personal view, from that wording, it is not in the best interest of Belize. I believe within my heart and soul that a more appropriate wording could have been put forward with regards to setting a situation to put Belize into the best possible position.
If I understand this properly, though, the way this process will work is that we either vote yes or no, and if we vote yes, then Guatemala files its papers, its claim form.
Yeah.
You know, what did sue you for?
Yeah.
And then we have a time to respond. So what we vote for as to whether or not we go to the ICJ will not be incorporated into their claim form. They will then define what the claim is, with reflection on that in terms of both on what grounds. But the specific of their claim is what's important. So are we looking at the wrong milepost is my question. We're looking at all compromise, but the real thing is when they do file it, is then we will know what it is that they're claiming.
Again, I beg to differ because the compromise, the special agreement, is the one that sets the parameters for the referendum vote.
Yes.
The referendum vote is the point at which we either jump off in the deep end or we stay where we are and go along a more amenable path with regards to Belize. So I cannot downplay the significance of the wording of the special agreement compromise because it sets the parameters for the 10th of April, and based upon what we do on the 10th of April, then we move forward.
But the referendum question is essentially what will be put forward towards the court. So what I'm trying to understand, and that's why I use the example of especially legalese, would you have preferred a differently worded referendum for Belizeans or for the joint referenda? Because it is taken directly from the special agreement, and that will be what will be put forward to the court. So it has to be in legal language.
What I'm fundamentally saying is this. I have no problem with the legal language. Of course, this has to be written in legal language because it's a legal document. But in terms of what is conveyed through the wording in that language, for me, as a Belizean, I do not feel comfortable with it.
Okay.
And I'm very, very definitive with regards to that.
If I were to ask you flat out, both of you gentlemen, whether or not the real issue that you are having is not anything other than trust. Everything that you say boils down to trust. We shouldn't trust the court. We shouldn't trust the people who wrote out this thing. We can't trust that the result will be in our favor. We can't trust that shaking up the ship will in any way benefit us. That it really comes down to an issue of trust. And in relation to the issue of trust, the yes side really has pointed to specific documents and specific. So if you say, okay, I have a problem that all snakes bite, they come back with a statistic that shows you there are 150 versions of snakes and only 30% of them bite, and 50 of them live in Africa, and we live in Belize. So the probability you get bite, that's 0.0%.
My problem with that is...
You understand what I'm saying? That every time that you have raised an issue of trust, they have looked at a specific thing and said, listen, this answers your question.
It hasn't answered the question for us.
It doesn't answer your fear.
It hasn't answered the question
Yeah,
for us in the BPM. And I'll tell you why. I have an issue with that because, well, first off, trust is a component of it, right? But my appeal to the Belizean people, our appeal to the Belizean people is this, is that you have to exercise common sense, right? And the fundamental thing is this. I really can't talk to the specifics because, well, you could run back the tape. And I don't know if you went to The Hague, right? But what I saw when some of the legal minds at The Hague were discussing that issue, and again, you get snippets of it, but one of the things that really, really stood out to me was when the gentleman said that, well, he's never really seen a case quite like this where potentially half of a country has been, you know, proverbially put on the chopping block. That in and of itself raises a red flag for me. So I will concede that a certain aspect of it involves trust, but it also involves a very, very fundamental component, which is common sense.
But just to follow up, because that coverage did later on include the fact that Guyana and Venezuela are in a situation where they're going to the ICJ for an advisory opinion, but on 66%.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because this ties into the other element with regards to why there's so much apprehension in terms of the path that has been put forth by the government and its cohorts, is that there are other viable means by which to address this issue.
Well, and because I saw your face light up when we said advisory opinion, I want to go back to one of the things that you pointed out as one of the apprehensions, or one of the reasons you were saying no to the ICJ, which is the fact that there's no appeal process of going to the International Court of Justice. What you were calling a con, if we were doing a pros and cons list, is actually a pro from the people who are pushing for a yes vote. Because if the solution is that Belize's borders remain as is, if that's the ruling coming out of the ICJ, then it's a great thing that we don't have an appeal process built in.
It's fine.
Well, yes, it's
Of all that you said, the key operative word is if.
If, yeah.
If is critical.
But Paco, if
is
you are
critical.
also saying if, because your issue of whether or not we lose anything at the court is also if.
Well,
we can only guess hypothetical what will happen in the court.
What I'm saying is that there are other means by which to go about doing this, and one of the means is to, excuse me, petition the Security Council with regards to getting an advisory opinion. And that in and of itself negates a lot of the potential risk that this route that the government is pushing puts forward. So again, you have to put these things on the proverbial balance. And for me, I will concede that the history with regards to the 1859 treaty, the relations between the UK, Guatemala, Belize, what have you, it's very complex. But insofar as I'm concerned, we're at the 11th hour right now, and what Belizeans must do is look at this thing from a fundamental perspective. And as I said before, put it on the proverbial scale. You know what the inherent risks are, which are shaped by virtue of the special agreement compromise, versus what are the purported benefits. And it's fairly straightforward.
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. I just want to add that we are in a position here where Guatemala President Serrano once appreciated Belize for what it is, independent nation. But my point is, talking to the Belizean people, I want to give you a scenario. If my great-grandfather had a property, I don't care how he get it, but he had all his document for it. Then he passed it down to my grandfather, and my grandfather to my father, and my father passed it down to me. Now I'm in possession of all my document, my tax paid up and everything. Wouldn't it be stupid for me to walk into the Chief Justice chamber and say, Chief Justice, look at these things, man, and tell me what's going on with them? Nobody's, I mean, that man would wile me out his office. You're wasting my time, and he say you have everything intact. Now, why? There was a time when compensation was discussed, and Guatemala agreed to compensation, but it wasn't discussing it with Belize, it was discussing it with Britain. So I don't see the practicality of us even considering going to the ICJ. This is not a matter of fear.
But the missing element in that analogy is you have a neighbor who keeps on saying it's yours.
And who's
it's
taking
theirs, sorry.
Who's taking out the hardwood.
Yeah. Who doesn't even want you to have the fence there.
Let the neighbor go to the great-grandfather who made the deal with them and get their compensation.
Yeah.
This is not a problem for Belize. I don't see a problem here at all, Kevin. And moreover, Marlene was talking about the legal language. But that's the reason we have guys like you. From the very beginning, the peace movement have been consulting with lawyers constantly. And not one have given an advice that this language is difficult, that we cannot understand. The language is exactly what it is.
Yeah. I want to move forward on something you said, because you spoke of, and one of the things that I know was posed to the Prime Minister and has been a continuous question we've been hearing from the public, what happens if we vote no? One of the things you said just now was that Belize should go to the UN Security Council and request that we get an advisory opinion through the ICJ. What has been used as an explanation as to why that is not an option right now, so I'll give you a chance to respond to that, is that the UN Security Council will then refer you right back to the International Court of Justice for a legal case on this issue. What happens then?
Okay.
Well, in your mind,
my response to that
you
is,
will still say no to the ICJ?
My response to that is this, and again, it depends on who you ask, because if I recall correctly, I believe that Ambassador David Gibson actually did come out and say that it is a viable option, what we're proposing. So it depends on who you ask, and it also ties into the element of whether or not the political will exists to look at all the options that are out there. And insofar as the Belize peace movement is concerned, when you're talking about the territorial integrity of our nation, I believe that we need to look at all possible options before we put, whether it be half, 3/4 of our nation or what have you, on the proverbial chopping block, as is described by virtue of the special agreement compromise.
But, I mean, just to go back, I'm trying to extract, I don't know, this is a direct question that was put to you in terms of the scenario is, and as a strategist, as somebody who's advocating, you surely have looked through the matrices. If this happens, then that, and you've unfolded it. I think the question just now was, listen, if you go to an advisory position, which is what you've been advocating for, and the advisory position is that, you know what, anybody over there not shot in hell, but to not have to go to the ICJ, would at that point in time, would you then say, yes, go to the ICJ?
This is a sticking point, and this is the linchpin, and I know I sound like a broken record.
No, I'm just asking you to answer the question.
This is the answer you're going to get.
Sure.
The special agreement sets the parameters right now. If we were to go for an advisory opinion, separate and apart from the special agreement, which has certain parameters that are, I would say, untenable for Belize, then we could look at it from that perspective. But as long as this matter involves going under the aegis of the special agreement with the parameters set as it is, it's a definite no. It's a definite no. And again, it ties into what I said, common sense, straightforward common sense. Now, in terms of the potential to seek the advisory opinion from the UN Security Council, Belize still had the option to do that by virtue of the simple fact that Guatemala continues to aggress us in our sovereign territory at the Sarstoon, because we're no longer operating under a Pacific type of scenario between the two countries. I can speak to that myself because I've been down there. I've been chased by the Guatemalan military while in Belizean territory. Not only, leading up to the Sarstoon Island, but they chased us back well into Belizean territory. So then again, that's why I spoke very early about the lack of the political will to do this.
Can I ask this question?
Let me just add here, Marlene also spoke about our border remain the same just a while.
Hypothetically.
Well, we're not at the ICJ yet, and our border has changed because, believe me, the Guatemala have taken the Star Stone and right in front of our eyes. Because what are we going to do about if they can do that? No, man. You know, after this decision is made at the ICJ and give Guatemala any little input in Belize, the following day the general will be here with passport. You know, either be a
that's not some fearmongering there, but Rufus.
No, that's not fearmongering. That's not fearmongering at all. That's reality, Kevin. That's reality.
But I wanted to ask this question in terms of, as we've seen, I'm trying to put it in the most kind way. We've seen some political anomalies. We've seen normally we have very clear positions. You know, this person is bad, this person is good. It's normally very binary. But with this ICJ thing, there's a lot of inbreeding, flip-flopping. People who were in one position at one point in time change. People who were loyal and patriotic out of the Baymen now saying yes to going to the ICJ. It's just, we see foreign ministers who have been disavowed, discharged from their party. We've seen the Prime Minister sit down with one of his arch enemies. It's a lot of movement and a lot of weird movement. Does that movement to you show a bipartisan approach that they're taking it and trying to do the best thing for country? Or is it further proof that, listen, something is wrong and you should really run very far? And I ask you this, Rufus, because in my opinion, unlike a lot of other people who have been speaking, you don't have a political party. So nobody can say, nobody can say Rufus is BPP or VIP or...
This isn't the launch of your political career.
That really you truly have a non-partisan approach to this thing. So what do you make of all of the, I'm trying to use a very nice word, anomalies?
I know. But when Jesus was delivered, I don't think the guy came right out and said, that's the man, right? He hide behind the scene. This is the thing about these operators. They are not being clear to the people. They don't want to be seen. They know what they're doing is wrong. I have been contending for a long time ago that politicians in this country, and every single one of them, including Philip Golson, and I'm not ashamed to say this, they are fifth columnists working in the interest of other country. My brother, if you think Guatemala is by itself, you are making the biggest mistake. Israel in 1948 was created to disrupt the Arabs so that America can have clear access to their wealth, oil, ripping up the whole place. Now, Guatemala is a Central American Israel supported in the exact way as the Israel in the Middle East. If you think, when the oil company came in here, we thought Belize was going to be liberated. But right away you hear about, oh, it's just a small amount of oil. Then it gone to, it was a very, very small amount of oil. Then they went to a minuscule amount. I'm a minuscule, man. You know why they are doing that? Nobody going to invest these diamond end thing that they used to drill these places cost $500 million and upward. Nobody going to invest those money for a minuscule amount of oil. I am saying to the people, the day this thing go to the ICJ and Guatemala is giving a little part of Belize, we're going to frighten to see what happens. You're going to see B, you're going to see Exxon, you're going to see ESA, you're going to see all the oil company in Belize.
Let me just backtrack a bit on something you said, because you spoke of foreign interest, and this I want to address, because I've seen where your presentations, when you speak of voting no to the ICJ, that after a no vote, you advocate for an internationalization of the issue, a re-internationalization of the issue, which will be necessary because you will, if you go to the Security Council, you'll have to have support of other countries. And even if you want to have assistance in negotiation, maintaining the adjacency zone, all of these things will require foreign allies. Looking at the fact that, you know, diplomacy in itself is something that I think people don't necessarily want to understand. Do you feel, given the fact that the support from the international community at this time is that Belize and Guatemala take this issue to the International Court of Justice? They're saying there are wars happening all over the place. There are people starving. We need to invest our money in something better rather than having a continuous drain, and this is my words, not any specific foreign diplomat, on this particular issue. So take it to the court and settle it. Do you feel that Belize will be able to sway or be able to convince the international community, who we do need, whether we like it or not, that we are serious about this issue if
Absolutely.
we vote no?
Absolutely.
Tell me how.
Absolutely, because you're talking about sovereignty. And if the sovereign will of the people say that they're not with the special agreement compromise that forms the way to go to the ICJ under these circumstances, then the international community, in my opinion, should respect that. And then we re-engage them. So I have absolutely no question in my mind that once the people of Belize have spoken, and then we re-establish or reinstate an earnest diplomatic initiative, that we will have no problems in terms of getting the word out and getting the support that we need.
Paco, I just want to follow up with one thing. What does it say to you when 5 of the 6 former foreign ministers, who are really our key persons who engage with the international community, say yes to the ICJ? Doesn't that indicate then that they perhaps know firsthand that working with the international community, that there perhaps will not be an opportunity for them to go back to them and say, listen, or people voted no, or can you still help us?
I'm glad you asked that question, because basically, you said 4 of the 5 or 5 of the 6. In my opinion, it's because of those 5 of the 6 or 6 of the 6 why we're in this mess that we're in right now.
So you feel they were not doing what the Belizean people wanted from the beginning?
I didn't necessarily say that.
I'm asking
but
you
what
to
I'm
qualify,
saying,
yeah.
what I'm saying is that
I am saying it.
what I'm saying is that had they gone about doing things in a more equitable and reputable fashion with regards to the fundamental principles of good governance, practices and principles, we more than likely would not have been in this situation where we're facing a matter on the 10th of April where we're going to have to vote yes or no under some very dubious circumstances that are set by special agreement compromise that I believe should have never been negotiated along those lines.
One of the issues that BPM might have is in terms of articulating their no position, that it's a bit confusing. Because I listened to you just now, and you said that Belizeans might not be necessarily comfortable going to the ICJ at this time with this current compromise. So are you guys saying, because you've heard me before say this, that there are actually, to my mind, about 4 manifestations of what should happen. One is get out of your house and go vote, but when you go in on a boat, vote yes. Get out of your house and go vote, but when you go, the second one is vote no. The third is, listen, this, as advocated by Honorable Francis Fonseca, is, listen, people need their proper information and the time was too short. So postpone it, as we've done once before, and as Guatemala has changed their position in terms of the time when they do it, to give, so it's a true vote. We are not finished, we haven't done with all the referendum, with all the re-registration, and we don't have the campaign finishing properly. And the third is, listen, let's just completely put this in an icebox and put it down the road, and whoever deals with it down the road deals with it. It seems to me, by what you said just now, that what you are advocating indirectly, and that's why I'm trying to get you to clearly state your position, is if it were, what we want is to scrap the whole process right now. Start back to point 1, so do the compromise properly, put it to the Belizean people, whatever you need to do, and then when you have a proper one, then you go to whatever international body or arbitration body, court or whatever that needs to be done. Is that what you're saying?
What I'm saying, and I'll make it explicitly clear.
Can you first either acknowledge or deny what I am saying as your position to either be true or not true?
I will say that you haven't characterized it specifically as
So
I
no.
would have said it.
Okay, sure.
And what I'm going to say is this. Yes, there are many different dynamics to this entire scenario, right? Insofar as, and I'm speaking on my own, right? Because I'm not the spokesperson for the BPM per se.
That's what you're doing today, though.
Well, I'm speaking on their behalf, but I'm making it absolutely clear that this is Paco Smith's perspective, right? What I'm saying is this. Insofar as what we're facing right now, let us deal with the here and now. And the here and now is this. We have a referendum that's coming up on the 10th of April, right? For the reasons that I've articulated, I believe that Belizeans should vote no, right? Once that no vote is cast, definitely we have to move forward. Now, insofar as however we move forward, again, that should be based on the will of the people, right? And that is also, excuse me, buttressed by the fact that the people have to have full disclosure in terms of what the options are for them, right? So that is just my perspective on the matter, but I will concede that yes, there are many different dynamics, there are many different potential manifestations of this. But insofar as I'm concerned, with regards to, today is what, January what? 20-something?
22nd.
22nd to the 10th of April. Let us deal with the here and now right now. Let us not muddy the waters, so to speak, or muddle it. We have to deal with this issue immediately, and then we move forward from there. Because when we get into this scenario, and if and this and that, this and whatnot, it can get kind of confounding and confusing. And insofar as I'm concerned, for Belizeans,
I am worried,
again,
Paco.
But can
No,
I just
that's-
ask, I wanna ask a more specific
and I'll tell you why.
question.
I am worried when people try to interject and over-intellectualize a lot of aspects of this. I will concede that the history is very, very important. It's very, very complex. But when you're talking to John and Jane Q. Public, and you actually made the distinction between intellectuals versus non-intellectuals or whatever, I don't know the term that you're saying. And insofar as I'm concerned, everyone has to be abreast of what's going on. So from the no perspective, right? Yes, it's important to know the history. It's important to inform yourself with regards to history, but not to lose sight of the common sense element that is facing you, staring you in the face.
I probably misunderstood. I probably misunderstood what you're saying, because if that's what you're saying, then I really have. You're saying you don't like the situation where you say if this then that, and that's.
It's not a matter of whether or not I like it.
I'm saying if that's what you're saying, then
it's not a matter of whether or not I like it.
Because we're not playing checkers here, as Brother Rufus was saying. The international community, the big money people, they're playing chess.
Well, it's obvious that they're playing chess.
And when you're playing chess, you do not think one move ahead.
It's obviously,
if this happens, that happens.
It's obvious they're playing chess, because the Guatemalans have gotten us to the point where we've said that we don't have a border. They've gotten us to the point where we're actually putting up half of our,
and the average man on the street,
country
and the average man
on the chopping block, potentially.
And the average man on the street does exactly that. He might not do it in the same words, but the average man on the street isn't. The average taxi man is dumb.
Oh, I never said that.
He realizes.
You're the one that said intellectual versus non-intellectual. I was just quoting you.
He realizes that he wants to know how this pans out. Yeah. I'm an attorney. When they come to your office and they sit down, Mr. Arthurs, if this happened, then that happened. If this happens, or this
all
happened.
probabilities.
I said you have to look at that. You have to look at that. But insofar as the focal point between now and the 10th of April, Belizeans have to have very clear in their minds.
I hear what you're saying. You were saying focus only on the
not
noble.
only.
But it is, in my view, a bit irresponsible if we don't talk about what happens after a no vote. And if you're pushing for a particular position, then as what Kevin is saying, you need to be a few steps ahead of the game.
I never said don't be a few steps ahead. I said in terms of the focus.
But one of the things that
I'm not negating what needs to go on afterwards.
We have to address. What we talk about, what we hear when we hear you talk about the no campaign, and you've both said it, is that we shouldn't trust the international community who's proposing this at this point. But again, I go back to the fact that if you want to get the advisory opinion, you will require a negotiation, a conversation, a re-internationalization of the issue with the very same international community that you are saying has a different agenda.
No, but what I said, specifically what I said, when you brought that up, I talked about the issue of sovereignty, not about mistrusting the international community. I talked about the sovereignty of the vote of the people. If the people say, then I believe the international community should respect that, and then we re-engage, right?
But Marlene, I just want to add, this whole process is highly suspect, and for one reason. If the drivers of this process had any good intention at all, every dollar that comes into any fund to promote this campaign, shouldn't they just say, well, we get $10, $5 go to the no, and $5 go to the yes? Watch what we are looking at. It's all one-sided campaign. Every dollar goes to the yes. The no proponent don't have any finance, you know. We don't have any finance. If Kevin don't give $1 or $10, we don't have.
You can tell us how much he gives you, know. He shipped this club. I'm kidding.
No money.
Well,
To be fair, the referendum unit claims that they're unbiased. They're only putting forward the history of the claim. Although I've heard you say many times before that it is an unofficial yes.
So,
I'm just saying, to be clear.
So to unpack what Marlene is saying, what we have, we've never had a yes campaign. The yes campaign has just started yesterday by an NGO.
No, Kevin, no. The yes campaign started.
You know, the Prime Minister talk about legal truth and, you know, the truth is, that if you ask, there has been an education campaign, and now there is an NGO. So in terms of money, and even the NGO now is saying, listen, we're going to put some money in our credit union because we need some funding.
But Kevin, the Prime Minister also says many times, oh, my minister might have been doing things that look wrong, but it's not legally wrong. I mean, this is a liar's point of view all the time. The yes campaign began, and the very first day Mr. Elrington walked out there and start this process. It's a yes, yes, yes campaign. Nothing about no. They are not telling the people to, this is a process that we are asking you to vote on, and you might vote yes or no, and we respect that. No, Mr. Elrington gone as far as say, if you don't vote yes, you're a fool. But brother, you don't call that a yes campaign?
I did say that.
You were invited to participate in the ICJ forums across the country.
I can't particularly speak to that, but my understanding is that an invitation was extended at a certain point. If it was specifically from the referendum unit, I'm not certain. But I know that there was a point of contention with regards to whether or not we were being invited from the onset.
But did you do any presentations?
Personally, I didn't do any presentations.
People from the Belize Peace Movement, did they do any presentations?
The Belize Peace Movement has done presentations in different areas of the country, but not necessarily under the aegises of the referendum unit. For example, I know that Patrick Rogers did a presentation in Independence, but that wasn't through the referendum unit, if I'm correct. I believe that was under the auspices of the University of Belize, along with the senators, the sector of the senators, or something like that.
Supported by the referendum unit. I'm only saying that because it is unfair to say you've not been receiving funding, because that's a platform that was paid for by the referendum unit,
well, that's why
where both a yes and a no was included.
That's why I qualified what I said before I said it.
I know, because you understood what was said, but this is because we have to be honest, and I think this is where there's a lot of murky waters for people when they're trying to make this decision. Some things that are said by all those involved are very disingenuous. And I think if you are to say you've not been included, that would be a lie.
I didn't say that.
Because we have been, or you've not received funding. Perhaps there was not a direct transfer of funds, but you were given a platform that was paid for.
Well, that's not what I said. I didn't say that. So.
Well,
if at all these people have any good intention that are driving this process, do you think there should ever be a forum where proponent of the yes and the no campaign should be present? This thing should never happen where the yes goes around having these process.
But there was a no presentation as well.
But not in every forum. They are not.
In the recent round of forums by the University of Belize and the senators, the group of senators,
well, that
funded by the referendum unit, broadcast on television, open to the public. So it's not that you haven't been included.
And I didn't say that.
No, no.
I just want to make it clear, I did not say that. Okay.
No.
All right.
To me, the no vote represents the gut feeling of the average Belizean. Because the average Belizean is like, well, we have to deal with that, man. And that's ultimately, that gut feeling is normally developed afterwards by reasonable people. Either it is intensified more by looking at some of the facts, or it is gotten away with, that they move off from that position after they hear certain things. But to me, the initial position, the enable string, is this for me? Yeah. And as you say, the common sense position seems to be, why gamble? But practically, Belizeans understand that we have to move from where we are. If it is as it looks like there will be a no vote, with the responsibility of that being the gut position, whether or not that gut position is right or wrong, I'm not going to pass any judgment, because it might be very wrong, because sometimes your first feeling is wrong. It's only when you inform it that you come to the right position. So I'm not going to judge what that position is.
It could also be very right as well.
It could also be very right. So I'm not going to judge it. But what does the Belize Peace Movement do next if there is a no vote? Because your calculation cannot be, let's just get a no vote. It has to be, when we get a no vote, because this looks to be what the projection is, this is the way we're going to take the Belizean people responsibly to where they are. Right. And I want to throw in this as well. This to me has become a political football. I don't care what nobody says. People started one way, politicians on the stage, political parties coming out in another way. It seems to have become, no matter what it is, peeling behind the Belize Peace Movement. Some people might say, listen, that is really the BPP moving and trying to get some political credibility out of this thing. But there has to be a responsible movement after whatever vote it is, particularly if there's a no vote, to move us forward.
I agree with you, absolutely.
Definitely. Kevin, let's look at, I'm going to compare it to a disease. A disease can be raging in a community. Any disease can be raging in a community. Listen to this. But you know when it's become an epidemic? It's not with 20, 30, 40% hitting. It's just one little click that drive that disease over the edge and become an epidemic. You know what is happening here now? The Belize Peace Movement is non-political. But wouldn't it be beautiful after a no vote, these rascals just resign, get out of here, and a new, fresh movement coming that nobody knew as a political movement? Including you. You would be a part of that.
No, there's an ironclad possibility that that's not going to happen. There will be no resignation. I'm willing to bet my house on it.
That's the reason trumping up with a non-government organization. They want to blame that.
Final point, Paco, in responding to his question.
Definitely, the Belize Peace Movement, being an apolitical entity, we have to think forward. We are thinking forward in terms of what happens beyond the no vote, which we are hoping and praying that Belizeans will embrace, right? So don't feel as though we're sitting here playing checkers, because we're also playing chess, right? And in terms of, well, perception, people will always have whatever perception they choose to have. It's also with regards to facts. People refer to the facts that they seek out sometimes. Because I'll give you an example. I saw something on social media, and it was a discussion. I wasn't part of it. I just kind of flipped through it. And one person was advocating yes, one person was advocating no. And one person said, oh, it's due to cognitive dissonance. And when I looked back and I looked over the situation, I said, but that could go either way, right? In closing, I don't know if we're coming to the end of the segment.
Yes, absolutely,
okay.
Surely.
Coming to the end of the segment, I would simply like to say on behalf of the Belize Peace Movement that we are committed to full disclosure to the Belizean people. And that in and of itself is the crux of where we need to be. Because in order to make an informed decision, you have to know as much as you can with regards to the component parts. And that is one of the things that I, Paco Smith, personally feel had been missing from the efforts of the government with regards to the referendum unit from its onset. So for Belizeans, both at home and abroad, even the Belizeans that are abroad, because that's another dynamic.
That's a
right?
whole other conversation, yeah.
You can still register to vote, go to the Elections and Boundaries Department, register to vote, because we can advocate all we want about, you know, the merits of no versus yes or what have you. But if you're not registered to vote, you can't participate.
All right. Thank you very much for coming in, gentlemen.
It's our pleasure.
We're going to go ahead and take a break. When we come back, we'll be talking about professional etiquette in the workplace, so stay tuned.